Guiding certified divers is often the basis for a dive master's or scuba instructor's employment. The NAUI active status member assumes responsibility for leading divers underwater, showing them to and around a particular site and guiding them back to the boat or shore exit point. NAUI dive masters, assistant instructors, training assistants, and scuba certified skin diving instructors working under the supervision of an active status NAUI instructor may escort divers in training on the surface and may also accompany up to 2 students underwater after the skills evaluation portions of the second and subsequent open water training dives. Given the range of diving variables, not the least of which is the divers themselves, dive guides can't assume the role of personal safety guardian or lifeguard. Guides should point out that although their assistance is available, a diver's buddy will almost invariably be closer and thus better able to give aid than the leader. Divers often ask guides to help them participate in personal interests, such as taking game, photography, video, or finding artifacts. Guides should avoid participation in such activities to the extent they may distract them from their primary responsibility to the group. There is no maximum number of certified divers a NAUI leader may guide underwater. Depending on the activity and divers, however, 8 to 10 is a reasonable number for one experienced guide under ideal daylight conditions in clear, calm water. Despite contrary minority opinions, buddy diving is the industry's standard practice and is unmitigated by the presence of a dive guide or participation as a member of a larger group. Whenever necessary, guides should facilitate buddy pairs forming, making introductions and suggestions. If aware of their increased risks and willing to accept them, divers should be permitted to dive in non-standard teams of 3 or more. A dive guide's briefing should include a description of the type of positioning to be used during the dive and the request that divers maintain the same relative positions throughout the dive. The suggestion to divers that it is their responsibility to keep track of the guide, not vice versa. If a floating line is used to assemble the group, the leader should be certain that there is enough room for all the divers on the line. If surface conditions are unsuitable for assembling the group, divers may be instructed to descend in buddy pairs to some convenient point on the line or to assemble in buddy pairs as a group on the bottom. Guiding divers during descent is one of the most difficult aspects of any dive. It's best to have the group descend on a line and to keep the line within sight until all divers and the guide are on the bottom. It should be explained, understood, and agreed during the briefing that anyone who cannot descend within 2 minutes after the start of the descent will abort the dive and wait for the next one. Individuals who are unable to equalize underwater should be escorted to the exit point. Since guided divers are certified, buddy teams may ascend independently of the group. Guides should stay with the majority of the divers and generally exit the water last. The most important groundwork for successful guiding underwater is positioning. Guides must position themselves in relation to the terrain and must position divers for maximum visibility and control. It is important for the divers to understand they have the responsibility of maintaining contact with their guide. The choice to chase a diver who descends deeper than the planned maximum depth is a difficult one for any diving leader, but guides have a responsibility to the whole group that supersedes jeopardizing themselves in this manner. Guides should attempt to gain the attention of the offending diver with audible signals, hand signals, or by dropping a small object in front of the diver, if possible. It is generally unacceptable to terminate a dive for an entire group of certified divers when a diver or buddy pair is low on air and everyone else in the group has sufficient air to comfortably continue. If one member of a dive team is low on air and the anchor line or exit point is distant, that buddy team should be directed to the surface. The remainder of the divers should complete the dive. One of a guide's primary concerns is that a diver will run out of air. In the event a buddy cannot or does not share air with an out-of-air diver, guides should if possible. Guides should similarly always try to prevent an out-of-air diver or one who rejects the regulator from bolting to the surface if possible. Divers who make emergency ascents should be accompanied until out of the water. While guides are not lifeguards and distressed divers should first obtain assistance from their buddies, NOWI members are trained professionals and routinely expected to help divers underwater and at the surface as best they can. Once the decision to aid or rescue is made, the diving leader must perform to the standard of care of a diving professional and must see the emergency through to completion. Normally, this means until the point when victims can be turned over to more qualified emergency care providers. The major difference between guiding certified divers and escorting students is the increased level of responsibility, care, and vigilance required when working with relatively inexperienced students in open water. Leaders assigned to escort students must be certain that they understand exactly what is expected of them. Escorts should stay close to and particularly concentrate their attention on the students during entries and exits. Students are unfamiliar with their new center of gravity with gear on and may need assistance to keep from falling. After entry, students may experience disorientation or adjustment problems for which an escort should be alert. Once in the water and moving toward their destination, escorts usually swim on their backs, enabling them to continually monitor and encourage following students. Students should generally swim face down at the surface, looking frequently at their buddy and their escort, with either a snorkel or their regulator second stage in their mouths. Escorts should strive to make surface excursions informative and enjoyable. Stopping from time to time is a good idea that enables student divers to regroup and rest. Students should never be left alone at the surface or taken underwater without the supervising instructor's explicit direction. Remember at all times that escorts are not diving with students. Rather, they are assisting instructors with completing students' open water training. Escorts are nearly always within touching distance of student divers, especially before the students have completed their third training dive. An escort may accompany a buddy pair by remaining slightly above and behind, either to the left or the right, but within touching distance. If assigned a single student, escorts maintain a position that easily enables them to render any necessary aid to the student and reinforce the concepts of buddy diving. When the instructor turns the students over to an escort underwater, such as after conducting skill evaluations, the escort should immediately take charge. Escorts must adjust their swimming pace to accommodate students' abilities and should encourage students to move slowly and gracefully through the water by doing so themselves. Remind students about buoyancy adjustments and buddy contact, and use routine hand signals to have them check and communicate their cylinder pressure to each other and their escort frequently. Escorts should look at students' gauges on occasion in addition to accepting their hand signals to ensure accuracy. Students who are to ascend with their escorts should remain at exactly the same level and maintain the same ascent rate as their escort throughout the exercise. If possible, escorts should make a precautionary decompression stop at a depth of 5 meters, 15 feet, even though a stop may not normally be required from the training depth. Such a stop helps ensure a well-controlled ascent and helps students develop prudent diving habits. The instructor will most likely conduct a formal debriefing of the training experience for the entire group. Escorts should be prepared to provide instructors with feedback relative to student performance on the tour at this point.